Introduction. What if the greatest technologies in history weren't invented but forgotten? From cities that vanished beneath the sea to machines that shouldn't have existed thousands of years ago, ancient legends speak of powers and knowledge far beyond their time. Tonight, we dive into the mysteries of lost technologies, creations so advanced, they blur the line between myth and reality. Get comfortable, turn down the lights, and let's explore the secrets our ancestors may have left behind. The Great Pyramid Energy Theory. For centuries, the Great Pyramid of Giza has stood as a monument of mystery. Rising from the desert like a geometric riddle, it has survived earthquakes, wars, and time itself. Its precision is unmatched among ancient structures, perfectly aligned with the cardinal points, and built with a mathematical accuracy that seems almost impossible for its era. But beyond its architectural grandeur lies a theory that pushes the limits of what we believe possible. Some researchers suggest that the Great Pyramid was not a tomb, but an enormous energy machine, a device designed to harness and transmit power. This idea first emerged in the early 20th century when engineers noticed something curious about the internal layout of the pyramid. The so-called King's Chamber, Queen's Chamber, and the narrow shafts that extend outward appear less like ceremonial spaces and more like components of a sophisticated mechanism. The geometry, materials, and orientation of these chambers have led some to wonder if the builders were aware of subtle forces within the earth, forces that could be amplified, focused, or transmitted through stone. Granite blocks, used extensively in the upper chambers, contain traces of quartz, a material known for its piezoelectric properties. In modern technology, quartz can convert mechanical pressure into electrical energy. If the pyramid's chambers once vibrated under the influence of sound, movement, or even the Earth's own natural resonance, it is theoretically possible that electrical energy was being generated or manipulated inside. Some engineers who studied the structure have compared it to a giant tuning fork, a stone resonator built to interact with planetary vibrations. The placement of the pyramid on the Giza Plateau also adds to the intrigue. It stands over a powerful geological junction where underground water channels flow through limestone and granite. When water moves through rock containing quartz, it can produce small electric currents. Combined with the pyramid's immense mass and precise alignment, some theorists suggest this flow of energy might have been directed and amplified, creating a form of natural power plant, one that worked in harmony with the Earth itself. Inside, the air shafts once thought to be symbolic or decorative appear to have an engineering logic of their own. They are positioned at exact angles, connecting the inner chambers with the exterior, as if designed to channel air, sound, or even energy. When examined using modern scanning technologies, these shafts show a level of precision more common to modern engineering than ancient stonework. Each line, each measurement, seems to follow an underlying system, a hidden design that speaks of purpose rather than coincidence. The casing stones that once covered the pyramid were made of highly polished white limestone, capable of reflecting sunlight with great intensity. If the structure were once covered completely, it might have shone like a massive mirror in the desert. Some researchers propose that this surface could have helped conduct or store static electricity from the surrounding atmosphere, further supporting the theory of an energy function. Over thousands of years, these outer stones were stripped away, leaving behind only the rough core that we see today. The interior design of the pyramid is equally compelling. Narrow passages and sudden expansions in the corridors create a pattern similar to acoustic chambers used in sound engineering. Experiments inside replicas of the King's Chamber have shown that sound waves at specific frequencies can cause the granite to vibrate. These vibrations can, in turn, generate measurable electromagnetic effects. It's a small but fascinating hint that the ancient builders might have known more about the interplay between sound, stone, and energy than we assume. Those who support this theory believe that the Great Pyramid functioned as a wireless energy transmitter, not unlike the experiments of Nikola Tesla, who dreamed of sending electricity through the air without wires. The pyramid, in this vision, becomes an ancient precursor to modern wireless technology, drawing power from natural sources and distributing it across distances. Whether this energy was used for lighting, communication, or something beyond our understanding remains unknown, but the concept is strikingly ahead of its time. Skeptics argue that there is no direct evidence to support such claims, and that the pyramid's purpose as a royal tomb remains the most plausible explanation. Yet, the perfection of its design, the durability of its construction, and the complexity of its layout continue to defy simple interpretation. Even if it was not a machine in the modern sense, it may still have embodied principles of harmony and resonance, a symbolic union of earth and cosmos expressed through architecture. Standing beneath the shadow of the Great Pyramid today, one can feel a presence that is neither fully understood nor easily explained. The structure hums with an invisible stillness, as if it once held a rhythm that has long since faded. Whether it was truly a generator of energy or simply a monument to the human spirit, it reflects a level of intelligence and craftsmanship that borders on the extraordinary. The theory that it once harnessed the planet's natural power remains unproven, but it continues to inspire scientists, dreamers, and seekers of lost technologies to this day. The stone spheres of Costa Rica. Deep in the rainforests of southern Costa Rica lie hundreds of nearly perfect stone spheres, silent, symmetrical, and astonishingly precise. Scattered across the Diquis Delta and the surrounding jungles, these enigmatic artifacts have puzzled archaeologists for nearly a century. They range in size from small stones that can be held in the hand to massive orbs weighing more than 16 tons. Each one, shaped from solid granodiorite, stands as evidence of a lost mastery, a forgotten craft that seems to transcend the limits of the pre-Columbian world. The discovery came in the 1930s, when workers clearing land for a banana plantation stumbled upon several of these massive spheres buried in the earth. At first, they were dismissed as natural formations. But as more emerged, hundreds of them, all geometrically perfect, it became clear that they were man-made. The question was, by whom and for what purpose? What makes the stone spheres so remarkable is their precision. Modern measurements show that many of them deviate from a perfect sphere by less than 2 millimeters. Achieving this kind of symmetry with today's tools would be difficult. Yet these ancient artisans had no access to iron, steel, or advanced cutting instruments. Their tools, if they existed, have vanished completely. Even under the relentless scrutiny of modern science, the process by which these stones were carved, polished, and transported remains a mystery. Granodiorite, the material used for most of the spheres, is a hard igneous rock, resistant to weathering and extremely difficult to work with. To shape it with primitive tools would have taken years of effort and extraordinary skill. Some researchers suggest that the stones were hammered with other rocks and then polished with sand and water. Others suspect the use of heat and controlled cooling to fracture and refine the surface. Yet, none of these explanations fully accounts for the perfect geometry or the large-scale production. Hundreds of identical spheres scattered over vast distances. The arrangement of the spheres adds another layer of complexity. Many were found in carefully aligned groups, forming straight lines, triangles, and arcs that seem to follow astronomical patterns. Some point toward the rising or setting of the sun during solstices. Others align with distant mountain peaks. This precision has led some to believe that the spheres once served as part of a sophisticated system, perhaps marking celestial events, mapping territories, or defining sacred spaces that connected the people with the cosmos. Whoever made them belonged to a culture capable of organization, engineering, and a sense of geometric perfection rarely seen in the ancient Americas. Yet, this civilization left almost no written record. The builders of the spheres disappeared long before the arrival of Europeans, leaving behind only these silent remnants of their knowledge. The Diquis culture, as it is now called, remains one of the least understood societies in pre-Columbian history. The spheres are their only enduring voice. Over the centuries, many of the spheres were moved from their original locations. Farmers rolled them away, treasure hunters blasted them open, believing that gold was hidden inside. Museums took some for display, while others were left exposed to rain and erosion. Despite this damage, enough remain in place to suggest that their placement was not random. When mapped, they form complex patterns, spatial relationships that seem intentional, mathematical, and symbolic. Modern archaeologists view the spheres as expressions of power and knowledge. They might have marked the homes or burial sites of important leaders. Their perfect shape could have symbolized unity, eternity, or the celestial order. In this sense, they were more than objects, they were ideas carved into stone, a tangible reflection of how an ancient people perceived harmony between the human and the divine. For others, the mystery extends further. The technological challenge of producing such flawless forms without metal tools or machinery suggests a deeper understanding of materials and geometry. Some have speculated that the Dequis culture possessed techniques that have since been lost, methods of smoothing, shaping, and aligning that bordered on scientific precision. To this day, experimental archaeologists struggle to reproduce the same perfection using only the tools known to have existed in that era. Standing before one of these ancient orbs, half buried in the soil and surrounded by forest, it's difficult not to feel their quiet authority. They seem to hold a balance, an equilibrium between art and mathematics, earth and sky. Each one reflects the patience of its makers, the weight of time, and the enduring mystery of a civilization that vanished but left behind perfection in stone. Today, the spheres of Costa Rica are recognized as a UNESCO World Heritage Site, protected not just as archaeological artifacts, but as symbols of an ancient intelligence that once thrived in harmony with nature. Their exact purpose may never be known, yet their silent geometry continues to speak, reminding us that human ingenuity often leaves traces far beyond its time. Traces carved in rock, polished by centuries, waiting for us to remember. The Saqqara Bird. In 1898, inside a tomb at the ancient necropolis of Saqqara, Egypt, archaeologists uncovered a small object that would become one of the most puzzling artifacts in the study of early aeronautics. Carved from sycamore wood, light yet sturdy, it measured less than 20 centimeters across. At first glance, it seemed like a simple carving, a bird-shaped figurine, perhaps a child's toy or a symbolic offering to the gods. But as scholars examined its contours more closely, they began to notice something extraordinary. The bird was not shaped like any creature known to have lived in the Nile Valley. Its body, wings, and tail were not organic in design, they were aerodynamic. The object soon became known as the Saqqara Bird, and over the decades it has sparked one of archaeology's quietest yet most persistent debates. Could this small wooden carving represent a knowledge of flight, thousands of years before humans ever took to the skies? The piece was catalogued among other artifacts from the Ptolemaic period, around the 3rd century BCE, but its true age could be even older. Its design is simple yet remarkably sophisticated. The wings are curved downward at the tips, suggesting lift and stability. The body is smooth and proportioned like the fuselage of a glider. Even the tail, shaped vertically rather than horizontally like that of a natural bird, mirrors the rudder of an aircraft. To modern engineers, it looks less like an ornament and more like a prototype. Some Egyptologists have suggested that the object was simply a ceremonial hawk, a symbol of Horus, the sky god. Indeed, falcons and other birds of prey were deeply embedded in Egyptian religion, representing kingship and the heavens. Yet, others have pointed out that no other Egyptian bird carvings match this aerodynamic structure. The absence of feet, the flat underside, and the precision of the wing angles indicate something designed to move through the air rather than perch upon an altar. In the 1960s, an Egyptian physician named Khalil Messaha began studying the artifact in detail. He was struck by how closely it resembled a modern glider and proposed that it might be evidence of an ancient understanding of flight. To test the idea, replicas of the Saqqara bird were built and tested in wind tunnels. To the surprise of many, the models displayed stable aerodynamic properties. When balanced correctly and given sufficient thrust, they could glide gracefully through the air. Later experiments, using light materials and minor adjustments for symmetry, achieved even better results, reinforcing the impression that its shape was not accidental. Of course, no one can say with certainty that the ancient Egyptians possessed flight technology. There are no known machines, engines, or writings that describe mechanical flight in their civilization. Yet, the precision of the Saqqara bird raises questions about the boundaries of ancient craftsmanship and imagination. It might have been an early study of how objects move through air, a small model that hinted at principles rediscovered millennia later. Some researchers suggest that the figurine could have served as part of a ritual related to air currents or the afterlife. In Egyptian cosmology, the soul, the Ba, was often depicted as a bird that could move freely between the world of the living and the dead. Perhaps the carving was meant to symbolize that passage, embodying a literal and spiritual concept of flight. Others imagine that artisans simply observed the behavior of birds and tried to reproduce their grace in wood, inadvertently discovering aerodynamic balance through intuition. The mystery deepens when one considers the precision required to carve such a piece. The wingspan-to-body ratio, the weight distribution, and the curvature of the surfaces all suggest an understanding of proportion beyond mere decoration. Whether by accident or deliberate design, the result is a form that interacts with the air in a highly efficient way. The object reflects both artistic sensibility and technical awareness, two qualities that, when combined, often lead to innovation. Today, the Saqqara Bird rests in the Egyptian Museum in Cairo, enclosed in glass and surrounded by centuries of speculation. Visitors often pause before it, sensing something deeper than its size might suggest. It represents the intersection of myth and engineering, faith and physics, a small artifact that holds within it the shadow of a great idea, that the dream of flight may not be as modern as we think. If it was meant to soar, then the Saqqara Bird was not merely an offering or a symbol, but a fragment of lost experimentation, a whisper of knowledge that once brushed the edge of discovery and then vanished into time. It remains motionless now, its wings frozen in stillness, yet its form continues to move minds across the world. Whether a spiritual emblem or an ancient prototype, it embodies a timeless truth, that humanity's desire to rise above the earth is as old as civilization itself. The Quimbaya Artifacts. High in the green valleys of Colombia, in the heart of ancient Quimbaya territory, a collection of small golden objects was discovered, delicate, shimmering figures that would come to provoke one of archaeology's most enduring debates. Known collectively as the Quimbaya Artifacts, they were crafted more than 1,500 years ago by a civilization whose metalworking skills were among the finest in pre-Columbian America. These golden miniatures, no larger than a few inches each, depict creatures that appear to fly, their sleek, aerodynamic shapes unlike any known animal or bird of that time. The Quimbaya were expert goldsmiths. They developed techniques of smelting and casting that produced alloys of remarkable purity and resilience. Their jewelry, ceremonial vessels, and ornaments show an artistic sophistication that rivals any of the great ancient cultures. Yet it was these peculiar small figures, unearthed in the early 20th century, that captured the world's attention. At first, they seemed like representations of fish or insects, but a closer look revealed something unsettling. They looked mechanical. Each of these golden figurines possesses features that appear to mimic the structure of modern aircraft. They have triangular wings, vertical tails, and streamlined fuselages. Some even display what resemble cockpit canopies and stabilizing fins. Their symmetry and balance are striking, their form functional rather than purely decorative. To the human eye trained by the modern age, they are unmistakably reminiscent of airplanes or even jet fighters, thousands of years before the concept of flight ever became reality. When the artifacts were first studied, archaeologists classified them simply as zoomorphic ornaments, stylized representations of local fauna. Yet engineers, pilots, and aeronautical experts who later examined them noticed something more. Their shapes align closely with principles of modern aerodynamics. When replicas of the artifacts were built to scale and tested in wind tunnels, some of them demonstrated stable flight properties. With minor adjustments, such as adding a propulsion source, they were capable of gliding smoothly through the air. Such experiments reignited interest in the idea that these figures might be models, perhaps representations of an ancient understanding of flight or of something observed in the skies. To believers in lost technologies, the Quimbaya artifacts became evidence of forgotten science, a link between myth and machinery. To skeptics, they remain beautiful but misunderstood symbols, shaped by artistic imagination rather than technical knowledge. The Quimbaya civilization flourished between the 4th and 10th centuries CE, long before any record of mechanical flight. They left no written language, no diagrams, and no explicit explanation for the meaning behind their golden creations. Their art often combined realism with abstraction, turning animals into stylized spiritual forms. Yet even within that cultural context, the precision and geometry of these flying objects stand apart. The wings are level, the symmetry exact, and the overall form adheres to a logic of design rarely seen in ornamental art. The composition of the gold itself adds to the intrigue. The alloy used, a blend of gold, copper, and silver known as tembaga, was typical for the region, but its use in small, thin structures required exceptional control over temperature and casting methods. The artisans of Quimbaya mastered these processes centuries before similar techniques appeared elsewhere. This level of technical mastery suggests that they understood not only aesthetics, but also material science, the behavior of metals under heat and stress. For those who seek lost technologies, the artifacts are more than decoration. They are messages in metal, encoded symbols of knowledge once known and then forgotten. Some propose that these shapes might commemorate celestial events, meteors, or even visitations from the sky that inspired awe and imitation. Others argue that they represent the fusion of myth and observation, the embodiment of flight as a divine principle, rendered in gold to honor the gods above. Regardless of interpretation, the Quimbaya artifacts bridge two worlds, the world of art and the world of engineering. Their makers may not have intended to design machines, yet their hands shaped forms that obey the same laws of physics as the wings of aircraft. It is a convergence that feels both accidental and deliberate, an echo of invention emerging from intuition. Today, these golden figures rest behind glass in museums, their surfaces glimmering under controlled light. They no longer fly, but their form still evokes motion, as if the memory of air flows across them even in stillness. Visitors stand before them and see both the past and a possible future, intertwined in a single gleaming artifact. The Quimbaya artifacts remind us that human creativity often anticipates discovery. Long before engines or turbines, long before the Wright brothers or aeronautical theory, there were artisans who, guided by imagination and observation, captured the shape of flight in their art. Whether symbols of gods, spiritual messengers, or echoes of a forgotten technology, they continue to whisper of a time when the line between mythology and science was not yet drawn, when gold carried the dream of the sky. The Sonic Levitation of Tibet. Among the legends that blur the line between myth and physics, few are as haunting as the accounts of the Sonic Levitation of Tibet. High in the Himalayas, where the air thins and silence becomes almost tangible, ancient stories speak of monks who could lift massive stones using nothing but sound. According to these tales, great monasteries and temples were constructed not by muscle or machinery, but through resonance, through harmonics that caused matter itself to move. The first modern mention of this phenomenon appeared in the early 20th century, when a Swedish physician named Jarl Henrik claimed to have witnessed Tibetan monks using drums, horns, and chanting to raise large stones up sheer cliffs. His reports described a semicircular formation of monks positioned before a cliff face, each carrying an instrument precisely tuned to a specific frequency. In the center of their circle, a stone block lay upon the ground. When the ritual began, the air filled with deep, rhythmic sound, a measured blend of percussion, wind, and human voice. Gradually, the stone began to tremble, then rise, slowly, as if caught in an invisible current, before moving through the air and landing gently upon the cliff above. Jarl's account was dismissed by many as exaggeration, but it lingered, partly because it fit within a broader tradition of Tibetan acoustic practices. The monks of the Himalayas have long used sound not merely for music or prayer, but as a form of energy. Their chanting, which can sustain low frequencies for extended periods, produces measurable vibrations capable of influencing air and even solid surfaces. Modern scientists studying Tibetan overtone singing have recorded acoustic energy dense enough to cause minor physical resonance in nearby objects. Though far from sufficient to lift stones, it hints at a deeper principle, that sound, when properly tuned and amplified, interacts with matter in complex ways. The concept of sonic levitation, though unproven, is rooted in real physical laws. Sound is vibration pressure waves moving through a medium. When those waves meet certain frequencies and amplitudes, they can create standing waves, zones where energy accumulates and can exert force. In laboratory conditions, researchers have used intense sound fields to levitate small particles, droplets of liquid, even tiny objects of metal. The effect, known as acoustic levitation, is well documented. What the Tibetan legend suggests is that ancient practitioners might have scaled this principle to monumental levels, harnessing sound as a practical tool for construction. Skeptics argue that the technology and energy required for such feats would exceed what could be achieved with simple drums and horns. Yet those who have visited remote monasteries describe soundscapes so immersive that they seem to alter perception itself. Layers of resonance that vibrate through stone walls, skin, and bone. In that environment, the idea that sound could affect matter does not feel entirely implausible. Ancient Tibetan texts contain subtle references to the power of vibration, the notion that the universe itself was created from sound, that every particle of existence hums with a specific frequency. Within such a worldview, manipulating matter through harmonics would not be seen as supernatural, but as a natural extension of understanding the laws of reality. Sound, in this context, was not entertainment or art. It was structure, a key to the invisible architecture of the cosmos. Over the years, engineers and physicists have revisited the story of Tibetan levitation with curiosity rather than belief. Acoustic levitation in modern laboratories remains limited to light materials and small distances, constrained by the intensity of sound pressure that can be safely generated. Yet, the principle remains valid. Sound can lift, shape, and move. What remains unknown is whether ancient civilizations could have harnessed this effect using organic instruments and natural amplification. Mountains acting as resonant chambers, the air itself tuned by geometry and rhythm. The enduring power of the legend lies not in proof but in possibility. It reminds us that the boundary between science and myth often shifts with knowledge. What seems impossible in one era can become demonstrable in another. The Tibetan story, whether literal or symbolic, speaks to a deeper human intuition, that the world is not static, that vibration and form are woven together in unseen harmony. Imagine, for a moment, the scene. A silent plateau beneath the cold sky, the slow pulse of drums echoing off the stone cliffs, the deep hum of horns rolling through the valley. Monks stand in precise formation, their voices merging into a single tone that grows denser, fuller, until even the rocks seem to tremble. The sound gathers like wind, lifting dust, stirring the air, and in that suspended moment, a heavy block begins to rise, carried by resonance and intent. A union of will, sound, and stone. Whether fact or legend, the idea of sonic levitation continues to echo through time. It suggests that knowledge once existed or was at least imagined, in which sound was more than communication. It was power. It was technology. And though the temples of Tibet now stand in silence, the story of their singing stones remains, humming faintly beneath the surface of human memory. A reminder that even the quietest vibrations may carry the weight of forgotten science. The Dropa Stones. High in the remote mountains of Bayan Kerala, along the border of China and Tibet, lies one of the most mysterious archaeological stories of the 20th century, the legend of the Dropa Stones. It begins not with discovery, but with silence. A hidden cave system, deep within the high plateau, untouched for thousands of years. Inside these caves, according to early reports, archaeologists in the 1930s found strange burial chambers containing hundreds of skeletal remains. The bones were small, fragile, and disproportionate, with large skulls and delicate limbs. Scattered among them were round, stone discs, each about 30 centimeters in diameter, inscribed with fine spiraling grooves that seemed to form a kind of writing. At first, the discovery was met with disbelief. The discs were unlike anything seen before, not decorative, not functional, yet meticulously crafted. Each had a perfect hole in its center, like a primitive vinyl record, and fine spiral lines carved so precisely that they appeared to have been etched by machine. When scientists attempted to decipher them, they found that the grooves were too regular to be random. They seemed to encode a message, an unknown language frozen in stone. The story goes that the Chinese archaeologist Chi Pu-ti, who led the early investigations, proposed that the caves had once sheltered an isolated community, perhaps an ancient tribe that perished in the harsh conditions of the mountains. But when he examined the inscriptions more closely, he suggested something even more extraordinary. that the discs told the story of a people who had fallen from the sky. These beings, known as the Dropa, were said to have come from another world, stranded on Earth when their craft crashed among the Himalayan peaks. The stones, according to this interpretation, were their chronicle, a record of arrival, struggle, and adaptation. Later accounts claimed that when the discs were subjected to laboratory analysis, they contained traces of cobalt and other metals uncommon in ancient artifacts. Some even reported that, when placed on a turntable-like device, they emitted faint electrical vibrations, as if they had once carried a charge. Though no verified sample has ever been produced for modern study, the legend persisted, growing with every retelling. It became one of those stories that exists in the space between archaeology and myth, impossible to confirm yet difficult to dismiss entirely. Skeptics have long argued that the entire story was fabricated, a fusion of misinterpretation and rumor that emerged during a period of limited communication between East and West. The supposed reports and photographs have never been conclusively traced to their original sources, and no verifiable evidence of the discs exists in any museum collection. Yet the idea of the Dropa stones endures, partly because it resonates with something deeper in human imagination. The notion that a prehistoric people might have encountered something beyond this world and left behind a coded message in stone is too compelling to fade completely. Even stripped of its extraterrestrial overtones, the story of the Dropa stones raises intriguing questions about memory and preservation. Carved spirals, circular inscriptions, and geometric patterns appear across many ancient cultures, from the petroglyphs of the American Southwest to the megalithic stones of Europe. These motifs may have represented astronomical cycles, solar movements, or simply an ancient fascination with eternity. The Dropa discs, real or not, fit within this universal human pattern. The circle as symbol of continuity, the spiral as metaphor for time. What makes the Dropa legend so captivating is its balance between plausibility and wonder. The mountains where the story originates are among the least explored regions on Earth, rich in hidden valleys and prehistoric sites. Even today, archaeologists continue to discover new evidence of ancient cultures in the Tibetan Plateau, societies that lived at extreme altitudes, adapted to the thin air, and left behind few traces of their existence. It is not impossible that one such culture might have created ceremonial discs, perhaps as calendars or records, whose meaning was later lost. Yet, beyond the layers of speculation, the Dropa stones remain a symbol of communication across ages, of messages sent through materials meant to last beyond civilization. Whether they were truly the chronicles of skyborne visitors or the sacred relics of a forgotten mountain tribe, they carry an enduring metaphor: the idea that knowledge can be stored in silence. Today, the legend survives mostly in books, whispers, and a handful of disputed photographs, each a fragment of a story that refuses to disappear. In the quiet imagination of the listener, the image forms easily: a high mountain cave, filled with the thin hum of wind, and rows of ancient discs lying undisturbed in the dust. Their spirals glint faintly in the light, as if still waiting to be read. Perhaps that is the true power of the Dropa stones, not in proof or evidence, but in their ability to invite reflection. They remind us that even if the story is legend, it reflects a timeless human impulse: to carve our existence into something permanent, to leave behind a trace of connection between worlds, whether earthly or beyond. The fire of the gods. Across many ancient civilizations, scattered in time and separated by oceans, there exists a recurring phrase: the fire of the gods. It appears in myths, scriptures, and epics, described as a luminous force descending from the heavens, a gift or a weapon, both divine and destructive. From the lightning bolt of Zeus to the blazing chariots of the Vedic texts, from the Ark of the Covenant to the flaming discs in the sky of Mesoamerican lore, humanity's earliest records speak of an encounter with power: a radiant, intelligent fire that could create, heal, or annihilate. The legend of this fire is not merely a poetic metaphor. It often appears in contexts suggesting technology, devices, or phenomena that could have been interpreted by ancient observers as supernatural. In the Sanskrit Mahabharata, weapons called Agniastra and Brahmastra are described as producing heat and light greater than the sun, leaving behind scorched earth and blinded warriors. In Mesoamerican chronicles, gods are said to have wielded beams of light, capable of carving stone and melting metal. In the Old Testament, the Ark of the Covenant was said to emit lethal radiance, consuming those who touched it unprepared. These are stories separated by millennia, yet they all share one central image: light as knowledge, as energy, as a bridge between the human and the divine. To the ancients, fire itself was already sacred, the first technology that changed the fate of humankind. But the fire of the gods was something more, a purer, more potent manifestation, a force beyond control. Some researchers have speculated that this mythic motif may have originated from real celestial phenomena. Meteor strikes, volcanic eruptions, or ball lightning could easily have inspired stories of divine fire descending from the heavens. Others have suggested that ancient encounters with advanced technologies, real or imagined, were reinterpreted through mythic language. What might have appeared as a beam, a glowing sphere, or a radiant object could have been recorded in the only terms available at the time: the language of gods and miracles. Still, even within scientific reasoning, there remains something haunting about the persistence of the image. The fire is always described as both a gift and a curse, a source of creation and destruction, wisdom and ruin. In Greek mythology, Prometheus stole this fire from the gods and gave it to humanity, granting progress but also suffering. In many ways, this mirrors the human relationship with knowledge itself. Every leap forward carries the shadow of potential loss. When archaeologists examine the ruins of ancient cities like Mohenjo-Daro or Sodom, sites where layers of vitrified stone suggest exposure to intense heat, legends of divine fire are sometimes whispered in the background. The phenomenon of vitrification, in which stone or sand melts and fuses under extreme temperatures, has been documented in a few ancient fortresses across the world. Though most explanations point to natural or military causes, the imagery evokes something almost mythic, the trace of a forgotten energy once unleashed. Some theorists interpret the fire of the gods as an allegory for hidden scientific knowledge, the lost mastery of energy that may have existed in ancient times. This interpretation is not entirely symbolic. Many ancient cultures seem to have understood electricity, magnetism, and plasma long before they were formally studied. The Baghdad battery, with its simple copper and iron components, could produce a small electrical charge. Egyptian depictions of the so-called Dendera light show what some believe to be an early experiment with illumination. Whether coincidence or evidence, these examples keep the idea alive, that humanity once brushed against forces we no longer comprehend. From a philosophical view, the fire of the gods represents enlightenment, the ignition of consciousness itself. It is the spark that lifts humanity from darkness, that transforms chaos into order. Every civilization has a myth about the moment knowledge was granted, or stolen, or rediscovered. In that sense, the fire is not only literal energy but also the light of awareness, the inner illumination that drives curiosity, invention, and transcendence. But the ancients always warned, this light demands reverence. In nearly every myth, those who misused the divine fire suffered consequences. Prometheus was chained to a rock. The builders of Babel were scattered. Even in modern times, humanity's mastery of energy, from nuclear fire to artificial intelligence, continues to echo that ancient duality. We hold in our hands a power that can create or destroy, and our myths, though ancient, remain prophetic. In the end, the fire of the gods may not refer to a lost machine or forgotten weapon, but to a state of understanding, a threshold that civilizations occasionally cross, only to lose again through time, war, or collapse. Its legacy lingers in the stories, reminding us that knowledge, like flame, is fragile. It must be protected, yet never worshipped, used, yet never owned. So the legends endure, of beams in the sky, of radiant artifacts, of temples struck by celestial fire. Whether these were metaphors, misinterpretations, or memories of something once real, they continue to resonate because they reflect the central paradox of human history: our unending search for the divine spark, and our struggle to bear its light without being consumed. The genetic engineering of the Anunnaki. In the oldest tablets ever found, inscribed in cuneiform on hardened clay. There lies a story older than any empire, older than recorded memory. It is the tale of the Anunnaki, the divine beings of ancient Sumer, who were said to have descended from the heavens to shape the destiny of humankind. To modern readers, they are gods. To ancient scribes, they were the architects of civilization. Yet beneath the layers of mythology, some see something different, a record of contact, of intervention, of creation itself. The ancient Sumerians described the Anunnaki as celestial visitors who came from a realm called Nibiru, bringing with them immense knowledge and power. They were not mere spirits or symbols. They were engineers, scientists, rulers. According to the texts, they established colonies on Earth, mined precious resources, and eventually created humanity, not as a spontaneous act of divinity, but as a deliberate experiment. Humanity, the stories suggest, was formed through genetic manipulation, a fusion of divine essence and earthly material, designed to serve and sustain the work of their creators. This idea, first brought to wider attention by interpretations of the Enuma Elish and later expanded by modern authors, paints the Anunnaki as genetic pioneers. The legend tells that early humans, primitive and unskilled, could not meet the demands of the gods' labor. So, under the direction of the Anunnaki figure Enki, a new being was formed, Lulu, the Mixed One. This hybrid possessed the strength of an animal, the intelligence of the gods, and the capacity for worship. In other words, humanity as we know it. The parallels with later myths are unmistakable. In the Hebrew Genesis, man is shaped from dust, given breath by a divine hand. In Greek legend, Prometheus molds humans from clay and grants them awareness. In Egypt, the god Khnum shapes life upon his potter's wheel. Across cultures, the pattern repeats, the creation of humankind not as an accident of nature, but as an act of intention, guided by beings of superior knowledge. From a modern perspective, these stories invite both skepticism and fascination. Could the ancient Sumerians, 5,000 years ago, have conceived of genetic engineering as metaphor? Or did they preserve fragments of a deeper memory, a time when something or someone altered the course of human evolution? To the archaeologist, the Anunnaki remain myth. To the speculative historian, they represent an allegory for lost science, perhaps even for contact with advanced beings mistaken for gods. In the myths, the creation of humanity was not without consequence. The Anunnaki's hybrid beings multiplied beyond expectation, developing self-awareness and independence. Some texts describe conflict among the gods themselves, debates over whether humankind should be destroyed or preserved. The Great Flood, retold later in the Epic of Gilgamesh and echoed in countless traditions, is portrayed as an attempt to reset the experiment, to reclaim control over what had become unpredictable. The survival of a single man, Ziusidra or Noah, in later retellings, ensured that the spark of humanity endured beyond catastrophe. Whether these tales conceal ancient truths or express symbolic truths about creation and control, they resonate because they mirror our modern anxieties. Today, as genetic science advances toward rewriting the code of life itself, we find ourselves in a position uncannily similar to that of the gods we once imagined. We splice, clone, and modify. We wield the same kind of creative power and face the same ethical questions that echo through myth. How far should knowledge reach? At what point does creation become transgression? The legend of the Anunnaki stands as both a myth of origin and a warning. It suggests that intelligence alone is not mastery, that to create life is to assume a burden beyond comprehension. It also speaks to the possibility that the human species carries within its genome a deeper legacy, one that science has yet to decode. Some modern researchers point to the abrupt leap in human development around 200,000 years ago, the emergence of language, art, and complex society, as an unresolved mystery. Others see it simply as evolution's natural acceleration. Between these two views lies the space where myth thrives. What makes the Anunnaki legend so enduring is not whether it is fact, but that it feels archetypal, a reflection of the oldest human intuition, that we are shaped, guided, perhaps watched. It may be less about extraterrestrial engineers and more about the recognition that consciousness itself feels foreign within nature, as though awareness was implanted, a spark not entirely of this world. Imagine the first dawn of humanity through this lens. The awakening of early humans, their eyes reflecting firelight for the first time, their hands shaping tools, their minds whispering questions into the wind. In that moment, something extraordinary had changed. Whether through divine intention or the slow genius of evolution, the human species began to look upward, toward the stars from which its creators were said to have come. And perhaps that is the true essence of the legend. Not that beings from the sky engineered us, but that within every human mind lives the echo of that same creative impulse, the drive to build, to explore, to know. We have become the very thing we once mythologized. The engineers, the creators, the seekers of hidden codes, the children of the fire, carrying within us the eternal question of who or what lit the spark. The machining marks of Puma Punku. On the windswept plains of the Bolivian Altiplano, more than 3,800 meters above sea level, lies a ruin so enigmatic that even seasoned archaeologists describe it with awe. It is called Puma Punku, the door of the Puma, a site that seems to defy both time and explanation. Scattered across a barren landscape are enormous blocks of andesite and red sandstone, some weighing over 100 tons, carved with precision that appears almost mechanical. The surfaces are polished flat, the corners perfect, the angles crisp as though cut by tools that should not have existed thousands of years ago. The mystery of Puma Punku begins with its craftsmanship. The stones bear deep, straight grooves, clean right angles, and interlocking shapes that fit together like puzzle pieces. Some feature perfectly drilled holes, evenly spaced, symmetrical, and of uniform diameter, as if bored by industrial equipment. Yet the site is believed to have been built more than 1,400 years ago by the Tiwanaku civilization, a people without written language, without the wheel, and with only primitive bronze tools at their disposal. How such precision was achieved remains one of archaeology's great enigmas. Modern engineers who have studied the ruins often express quiet disbelief. The H-shaped blocks, famous for their intricate symmetry, appear to have been mass-produced, identical in proportion and design, suggesting a kind of standardized system of assembly. When measured with modern instruments, the cuts reveal tolerances of less than a millimeter. This level of accuracy, found in the midst of ancient highlands, challenges conventional understanding of prehistoric stonework. Some researchers propose that the builders of Puma Punku used advanced techniques now lost to history, possibly involving abrasive compounds, primitive lathes, or methods of softening stone through chemical processes. Others point to evidence of modular construction. The idea that the site was designed like a machine, each block engineered to interlock with another in a precise architectural system. These interpretations, while grounded in reason, cannot fully explain the sheer uniformity or the scale of the work. Then there are the more speculative theories. To some, the machining marks are echoes of a forgotten technology, a relic of an age when human civilization possessed tools or knowledge that later vanished. The precision, they argue, hints at an understanding of geometry, vibration, and material manipulation far beyond what is known of the region's ancient cultures. The ruins, in this view, are not simply remnants of a lost city but fragments of a forgotten science. Yet, amid the speculation, Puma Punku remains profoundly human. It stands as a testament to ingenuity under impossible conditions, at high altitude, with limited resources, in a place where stone was both obstacle and canvas. Whether achieved through advanced tools or meticulous craftsmanship, the result is the same. Geometry made monumental, architecture that borders on the mathematical. When sunlight moves across the stones at dusk, the details come alive. Sharp lines casting deep shadows, surfaces gleaming as though still polished. One can almost imagine the builders standing there centuries ago, shaping rock with steady hands, guided by a vision of order and perfection. The noise of chiseling echoes across the plateau, mingling with the wind and the distant hum of the mountains. Archaeologists still debate the purpose of Puma Punku. Some see it as a temple complex, a ceremonial site aligned with celestial patterns. Others believe it served as an engineering center for Tiwanaku's architects, a place where techniques of monumental stonework were perfected. But the site's partial destruction adds to its mystery. The scattered stones, some overturned and fragmented, suggest a cataclysm. An earthquake, perhaps, or something more violent. Whatever the cause, the precision remains visible even in ruin, as though the artistry refuses to fade. What makes Puma Punku so haunting is not merely its age, but the impression it leaves, that we are looking at the residue of a mind that thought in straight lines, in measurable depths and exact proportions, at a time when the rest of the world still built in rough, organic forms. It challenges our assumptions about progress. It reminds us that the march of knowledge is not always linear, that mastery can be gained, lost, and rediscovered across ages. In the end, Puma Punku is less a question of technology than of memory. The machining marks are symbols of a forgotten dialogue between human intention and material resistance. Each groove is an equation, each cut a record of precision meeting permanence. Whether made by stone, metal, or something we no longer understand, they speak to the same ancient impulse, to shape the world according to pattern, to bring order out of chaos. When one stands among the scattered blocks, with the cold wind rising off Lake Titicaca and the high sky stretching endlessly above, the effect is almost humbling. The silence feels charged, as if the stones themselves remember. And in that silence, the marks on the rock become more than traces of ancient labor. They become a language, whispering across millennia, reminding us that technology, once born, is never truly lost. It waits, buried in stone, until we learn to read it again. The Archimedes Death Ray. In the ancient city of Syracuse, more than 2,000 years ago, lived a man whose mind still casts a shadow across the history of science. Archimedes, the mathematician, engineer, and philosopher whose understanding of geometry and physics was centuries ahead of his time. Among the many legends surrounding him, one stands apart for its audacity. The story of the Archimedes Death Ray, a weapon that harnessed sunlight to ignite enemy ships at sea. The tale first appears in Roman accounts describing the siege of Syracuse in 212 BCE, when the Roman fleet surrounded the city. According to later sources, Archimedes devised a series of ingenious defenses to repel the attackers. Catapults, cranes, and mirrors arranged to reflect and concentrate the sun's rays. These mirrors, it is said, formed a kind of solar weapon capable of setting wooden ships aflame from a distance. To the ancients, it must have seemed a miracle, fire born from pure light. But to the modern imagination, it sounds like technology far ahead of its era. The principle, in theory, is sound. Concentrated sunlight can generate temperatures high enough to ignite combustible materials. Modern solar furnaces work precisely on this concept. What remains uncertain is whether such a device could have been constructed with the tools and materials available in Archimedes' time. For centuries, scholars debated whether the death ray was legend or possibility. Ancient descriptions varied. Some spoke of polished bronze shields arranged in formation, others of a single parabolic mirror crafted to focus sunlight like a burning lens. Renaissance artists such as Leonardo da Vinci revisited the idea, sketching designs for giant reflecting weapons inspired by Archimedes' supposed invention. Even in the 20th century, scientists and military engineers tested the concept, hoping to determine whether the ancient story might contain a kernel of truth. The results were inconclusive. In 1973, researchers at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology reconstructed the experiment using hundreds of polished bronze mirrors. The reflections did indeed produce enough heat to scorch wood, but only under perfect conditions: calm air, direct sunlight, and stationary targets. The Romans, however, would have approached in motion, their ships rocking on waves, their surfaces uneven. Under such circumstances, the weapon's effectiveness would have diminished drastically. Most historians therefore conclude that the death ray, if it existed at all, served more as a symbolic story of genius than a practical instrument of war. Yet, like all enduring myths, it persists because it represents something deeper than its literal form. The Archimedes Death Ray embodies the idea of intellect as power, the notion that knowledge itself can become a weapon more potent than armies. In a world governed by muscle and bronze, Archimedes introduced the age of geometry and reflection, of harnessing natural forces through understanding rather than strength. His so-called death ray may never have set ships ablaze, but it illuminated something greater: the realization that nature's energies could be focused, amplified, and directed by human design. Some historians suggest that the myth arose from misunderstanding. Archimedes was known to have designed a variety of optical devices, including instruments to measure the movement of the sun. His fascination with mirrors and light was genuine. It is possible that later storytellers exaggerated his experiments, transforming an optical study into a tale of weaponized brilliance. Others believe the story was crafted intentionally to portray him as a kind of philosopher-sorcerer, a man whose intellect bordered on divine. Even stripped of its literal truth, the death ray remains a metaphor for civilization's eternal ambition to control the elements, to capture light, to turn knowledge into mastery. Today, solar technology stands as one of humanity's most refined expressions of that ancient dream. Vast fields of mirrors now focus sunlight to generate energy, not for destruction, but for creation. In a sense, the spirit of Archimedes' idea lives on, transformed from myth to science. Standing before the ruins of Syracuse today, one can imagine the old engineer at work, the gleam of bronze in the Mediterranean sun, the calm precision of his calculations, the hum of the sea beyond the walls. Whether or not his mirrors ever blazed with lethal fire, his legacy endures as one of the earliest explorations of light as force, the first attempt to harness the power of the stars themselves. And that, perhaps, is why the story refuses to die. The Archimedes Death Ray reminds us that between myth and invention lies only a difference of scale, that imagination is often the prototype of technology. Whether it was ever built matters less than the idea it carried. That the mind, when illuminated, can turn sunlight into weapon, thought into flame, and curiosity into the most powerful energy of all. The Lost City of Dwarka. Beneath the restless waters off India's western coast lies one of the most haunting legends ever to merge myth with archaeology. The story of Dwarka, the lost city of the gods. In ancient Sanskrit texts, Dwarka was described as a magnificent metropolis built by Lord Krishna himself, a shining city of marble and gold that flourished before vanishing beneath the sea. For thousands of years, it was thought to be pure mythology, a divine narrative, not a memory. But in recent decades, as the waters of the Arabian Sea were explored with sonar and cameras, that legend began to stir with the weight of evidence. The first whispers of rediscovery came in the 1980s, when divers near the modern town of Dwarka reported submerged structures, geometric formations that seemed too regular to be natural. Later expeditions by the National Institute of Oceanography revealed stone walls, pillars, and a grid-like pattern of foundations extending along the seafloor. Radiocarbon dating of samples suggested that parts of the site could be over 9,000 years old, a period far older than the earliest known cities of the Indus Valley. If true, it would rewrite the timeline of civilization itself. According to the Mahabharata and Harivamsa, Dwarka was unlike any other city of its time. It was said to have risen from the sea through divine command, its walls gleaming like crystal, its streets laid with silver and gemstones. From this sacred city, Krishna ruled as both king and philosopher, guiding his people through an era of prosperity and moral challenge. But the texts also foretell its end, how, after Krishna's departure from the world, the sea claimed Dwarka once more. The waves rose, the temples fell, and the city returned to silence, swallowed by the ocean that had first revealed it. For centuries, scholars regarded this as allegory, a poetic image of divine retribution or cosmic renewal. Yet, the discoveries beneath the Gulf of Quimbaya challenged that certainty. Sonar scans revealed massive, rectilinear structures spread across miles of seabed, along with pottery fragments and stone artifacts. The patterns were unmistakably human in origin. While debate continues over the exact age and nature of the remains, the coincidence is striking. The ruins lie precisely where the scriptures place Krishna's city. Scientists propose that the submerged ruins may represent an early coastal settlement, drowned by the rising sea levels at the end of the last ice age. If so, it would mean that ancient Indians preserved, through myth, a real memory of cataclysm, a story carried across millennia until it was written into epic. To archaeologists, this realization is profound. Myth, in such cases, becomes not fantasy, but history seen through the lens of memory and metaphor. The legend of Dwarka is more than a tale of a sunken city. It is a reflection on impermanence. The ocean, both cradle and destroyer, has always been central to humanity's story. Civilizations rise beside it, draw life from it, and ultimately surrender to it. The idea that a once great city could vanish beneath the waves reminds us of how fragile human achievement is, how time and nature erase even the grandest empires. Yet, Dwarka also represents hope, the persistence of knowledge across ages. Its rediscovery suggests that myth can act as an archive, preserving truths long after memory fades. The people who wrote of Krishna's city may not have been inventing legend, but encoding geological history in spiritual language. Their words, filtered through faith, preserved the record of a flood that reshaped their world. Standing on the modern shores of Dwarka, one can look out toward the horizon and imagine what lies beneath. Avenues once filled with light, courtyards lined with stone, the shimmer of towers now buried under sand and coral. The sea moves gently over them now, its tides whispering across forgotten walls. It is as if the ocean itself keeps the secret, guarding the line between history and divinity. For scientists, the ruins invite further exploration, the promise of rewriting the story of human civilization. For storytellers, Dwarka endures as a symbol, a city both lost and eternal, a reminder that even what sinks can still shape the future. And for those who listen closely, the waves still carry an echo, the faint rhythm of an ancient city breathing beneath the sea, waiting to rise again in the mind's eye. The Alchemy of Transmutation. Among the most enduring legends of lost technologies, few are as fascinating or as symbolically rich as the Alchemy of Transmutation, the ancient art said to turn base metals into gold and ignorance into knowledge. For centuries, alchemists across Egypt, Persia, India, and Europe devoted their lives to this pursuit, guided by cryptic symbols and coded manuscripts. What began as an attempt to master matter soon evolved into something far deeper, a search for the hidden mechanisms of the universe itself. The earliest records of alchemy trace back to Alexandria, where Greek philosophy met Egyptian mysticism. There, scholars like Zosimos of Panopolis wrote of a sacred science inherited from the gods, a technology capable of reshaping the physical world by harmonizing with its spiritual essence. The Egyptians believed metals were living entities, maturing slowly within the earth. To accelerate this natural evolution, to transform lead into gold, was not merely chemical but divine. It required understanding the balance of fire and water, sulfur and mercury, matter and spirit. As alchemy spread eastward, it took root in India and China, where it intertwined with spiritual traditions like Taoism and Ayurveda. In these cultures, the goal of transmutation was not limited to material gold, but extended to the perfection of the body and soul, the creation of the immortal elixir or soma. The process of refining metals mirrored the refinement of consciousness. The laboratory became a temple, and the furnace, a symbol of the human heart under transformation. By the medieval period, alchemy reached Europe, carried through the translations of Arabic scholars who preserved ancient texts during the fall of Rome. In their works, the philosopher's stone emerged as the ultimate secret, a substance said to hold the power to transmute any metal into gold and grant eternal life. Figures such as Jabir ibn Hayyan, Geber, Albertus Magnus, and later Paracelsus, each added layers of meaning to this mystery. Their writings described not just material reactions, but processes that resembled early chemistry: distillation, sublimation, calcination. Hidden among mystical allegories were genuine scientific methods, precursors to modern laboratory techniques. Yet, what fascinates historians is how consistently alchemy was treated as a fusion of science and spirit. The alchemists' experiments were physical enactments of a metaphysical belief that everything in existence shared a single origin, and therefore everything could be transformed. Lead and gold were not merely metals. They were symbols of imperfection and enlightenment. The transformation from one to the other mirrored the evolution of human consciousness, the quest to rise from ignorance to illumination. Throughout the Renaissance, royal courts secretly funded alchemists, hoping to unlock the secret of limitless wealth. Many devoted their lives to the search and many failed. But even in failure, they laid the groundwork for discoveries that would shape the modern world. The methods of alchemy, once cloaked in secrecy, evolved into the disciplined science of chemistry. The dream of transmutation, though never realized in its mystical form, persisted in spirit, eventually becoming reality in the atomic age, when humans learned to alter elements through nuclear reactions. Still, the mystery endures. Some researchers suggest that ancient accounts of transmutation may have described real, albeit misunderstood, chemical processes, the refinement of alloys, or the extraction of precious metals from or using early techniques. Others see in alchemy a coded philosophical system, its cryptic language designed to preserve knowledge through metaphor. Whatever its true nature, the legend of alchemy continues to represent the boundary between what is known and what is possible. The enduring allure of transmutation lies in its symbolism. It reflects humanity's eternal desire to perfect itself, to transform the mundane into the divine. Whether viewed as myth, proto-science, or spiritual metaphor, alchemy expresses a truth about our species. That we are not content with what we are given, but driven to evolve, to experiment, to turn darkness into light. In the end, perhaps the real gold of alchemy was never material. It was knowledge, the realization that transformation is possible, not through external power, but through understanding. The furnace of the alchemist's workshop was the world itself, and the metal under refinement was the human soul. And in that quiet fire, where matter met spirit, the first spark of modern science was born. The black stone mirrors of Mesoamerica. In the ancient heart of Mesoamerica, among the ruins of forgotten temples and the jungles that have reclaimed entire civilizations, archaeologists have uncovered a mysterious class of artifacts. Polished obsidian mirrors, dark and perfectly reflective, known as the black stone mirrors of Mesoamerica. For the peoples of Teotihuacan, the Maya, and the Aztecs, these mirrors were not mere ornaments. They were tools of vision, of ceremony, and perhaps of something that today we might call technology, a bridge between the physical and the unseen. Obsidian, a volcanic glass formed by the rapid cooling of molten lava, was highly prized in Mesoamerica. Its sharpness made it ideal for blades and ritual instruments. But its most profound use was in the creation of mirrors. Discs painstakingly ground and polished until their surface reflected like black water. Unlike the silvered mirrors of later centuries, these were deep and lightless, seeming to pull the gaze inward rather than reflect it outward. To those who made and used them, they were portals, instruments through which priests and rulers could communicate with the divine, see distant realms, or glimpse the workings of fate. In Aztec tradition, one of the most revered deities, Tezcatlipoca, was known as Smoking Mirror. His name itself was derived from obsidian. He was the god of night, illusion, and destiny, a being who could appear within the dark surface of the mirror to reveal truth or deception. Priests used these black mirrors in ceremonies meant to summon his presence, seeking visions or guidance. The mirror thus became both an object of reverence and a symbol of danger, a medium through which hidden knowledge could be accessed, but only at great spiritual risk. Some historians have suggested that these mirrors functioned as psychological instruments, aiding in meditation and trance. Others propose that they may have served practical purposes, perhaps for optical observation or even primitive signaling. Yet the level of craftsmanship they display suggests a significance beyond the ordinary. Many mirrors recovered from archaeological sites, such as Teotihuacan or Monte Alban, are so perfectly circular and polished that they rival modern optical glass in precision. Their makers understood not only the material, but the subtle geometry of reflection. The most famous of these artifacts resides far from its origins, an obsidian mirror once owned by the Elizabethan scholar John Dee, now held in the British Museum. Dee, who served as an advisor to Queen Elizabeth I, believed that through this mirror he could communicate with angels or other intelligences. His writings describe scrying sessions, in which the black surface became a screen for visions, much like the ancient rites of Mesoamerica. Whether by coincidence or cultural inheritance, the same symbol, the dark mirror as a tool of revelation, reappeared across continents and centuries. Archaeologists studying these Mesoamerican mirrors often note the extraordinary effort involved in their creation. Each one required months of labor, using only stone tools and sand to grind and polish the brittle material. The result was not only beautiful but almost hypnotic. When held in sunlight, the mirror's surface would shimmer with a faint smoke-like sheen, the effect that gave Tezcatlipoca his name. To the ancients, this must have seemed alive, a presence within the stone itself. Some researchers believe these mirrors were used in astronomical observation, their reflective surfaces helping priests track celestial events by focusing sunlight or firelight. Others see them as instruments of self-reflection in a spiritual sense, mirrors of consciousness. In either case, they reveal a profound connection between technology and ritual in ancient Mesoamerica, a belief that the material and the mystical were not separate domains, but two aspects of the same reality. Today, the black mirrors remain silent witnesses to a vanished understanding. Modern science can analyze their composition, measure their curvature, and reconstruct their methods of manufacture. Yet the purpose that animated their creation, the experience of looking into one and seeing not one's face, but the universe reflected back, eludes us. To the ancient craftsmen, the obsidian mirror was a living interface, a device that could reveal the invisible patterns binding heaven, earth, and human spirit. As one gazes into such a mirror today, its depth seems infinite, a pool of darkness that offers no reflection, only absorption. Perhaps that is the final message of these artifacts, that true vision comes not from what we see, but from what we are willing to face within the dark. The black mirrors of Mesoamerica remind us that long before the age of optics and glass, there existed a deeper kind of technology, one built not of machinery, but of perception. They were tools for exploring the unknown, both in the cosmos and in the human mind. And somewhere, deep in their polished surfaces, the echoes of ancient eyes remain, still searching the darkness for light. The Giants Tools of Baalbek. High in the Bekaa Valley of Lebanon lies one of the most enigmatic archaeological sites on Earth, Baalbek, a vast complex of ancient temples and colossal stone foundations whose origins stretch deep into prehistory. While later civilizations, such as the Romans, built their grand temples to Jupiter and Bacchus upon the site, the true mystery lies beneath, a foundation of stone blocks so massive that even modern cranes would struggle to lift them. These are the legendary Giants Tools of Baalbek, relics of a construction technology that seems to defy explanation. At the heart of the mystery are the trilithon stones, three immense blocks forming part of the Temple of Jupiter's platform. Each measures roughly 20 meters in length and weighs over 800 tons. Nearby, in the ancient quarry just beyond the site, lies an even greater marvel, the so-called Stone of the Pregnant Woman, a single monolith estimated at over 1,000 tons. Recent excavations have uncovered yet another block beneath it, even larger. The question that has fascinated archaeologists and engineers alike for centuries is simple. How were they moved? The official explanation holds that the Romans, masters of engineering, were responsible. Yet the precision of the cuts, the sheer scale of the stones, and their placement on an earlier platform suggest that they were part of a construction far older than Rome itself. The Romans, it seems, built upon the ruins of something ancient, a base so perfect and enduring that it became the foundation for every civilization that followed. Legends surrounding Baalbek are as old as the stones themselves. Ancient texts refer to it as the City of the Sun, a place where gods descended from the heavens. In the tales preserved by local tradition, the giant blocks were placed there by a race of titans, beings of immense strength who possessed tools and techniques lost to humankind. Some versions of the story claim that Baalbek was built as a landing platform for the gods, a structure aligned with celestial patterns and constructed using knowledge beyond its age. Modern engineers who have studied the site admit that, even with advanced machinery, transporting such stones over uneven terrain would be a monumental challenge. The quarry lies nearly a kilometer from the temple complex. How ancient builders moved these megaliths remains one of archaeology's unsolved problems. Some propose the use of rolling logs, ramps, and lubrication with oil or water, but calculations show that even these methods would require thousands of workers and impossible precision. The blocks themselves bear evidence of extraordinary craftsmanship. Their surfaces are smooth and tightly fitted, with seams so precise that a knife blade cannot pass between them. This level of accuracy implies not only advanced knowledge of geometry and stone cutting, but also tools capable of producing perfect planes across hundreds of tons of material. For this reason, the term Giants Tools became symbolic, referring not just to physical instruments, but to the lost mastery behind them. In a broader sense, Baalbek embodies a recurring pattern found across ancient architecture, immense stones cut and placed with an expertise that appears out of sequence with history. From the pyramids of Egypt to the terraces of Cusco, we find echoes of the same mystery. Civilizations using techniques that seem beyond their means, leaving behind monuments that endure long after their creators are gone. Baalbek stands as one of the greatest examples of this phenomenon, a puzzle carved in stone. Some researchers interpret the site through an astronomical lens. The temple's alignment with solstices and planetary cycles suggests that Baalbek was more than a ceremonial center. It may have served as an ancient observatory, mapping the heavens with mathematical precision. If so, the megaliths were not merely structural, they were instruments, their placement tuned to the rhythms of the cosmos. To walk among the stones of Baalbek today is to feel the weight of time itself. The air hums with quiet resonance, as though the earth remembers the labor that shaped it. Standing before the trilithon, one senses both awe and humility, a recognition that human history is older and more complex than we imagine. These stones, unmoved for thousands of years, seem to hold a silent testimony that knowledge can vanish, and that what we call progress may only be the rediscovery of what was once known. The Giants Tools of Baalbek remain an enduring riddle, neither fully myth nor fully explained. Whether they were carved by human hands using forgotten techniques or by a civilization whose memory has dissolved into legend, their presence challenges the boundaries of archaeology. They invite us to look backward not as skeptics, but as seekers, tracing the faint outline of an age when stone was shaped with impossible grace and precision. In the fading light of dusk, the megaliths cast long shadows across the valley. The wind moves between them like a whisper, not of gods or giants, but of craftsmen whose names are lost, whose tools turn to dust, yet whose work still defies the centuries. Baalbek endures as both monument and mystery, a reminder that some technologies, once lost, remain beyond the reach of time itself. Ending. The mysteries of lost technologies remind us how little we truly know about our own past, how much knowledge may have vanished beneath time, waiting to be rediscovered. Each of these legends, from the pyramids to Baalbek, whispers of a world where science, art, and spirit were one. If you enjoyed this journey through forgotten wisdom, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear what you think about these ancient enigmas. And if you know someone who loves a good mystery, share this video with them. Maybe together we can bring a little of that lost knowledge back into the light.